Welcome back to the Red Letter Disciple. It's another episode that we hope is going to challenge you to be a greater disciple no matter where you are. Today's is specifically designed for church leaders and pastors. We're going to talk about how to make disciples at your church. The mission of this podcast is just that, helping each and every one of us be great disciples. And a lot of us, well, we become great disciples through our churches. And so today we are flipping the mic. That's right. Chris Johnson is interviewing me. I've been working behind the scenes on an online course that is literally launching this week. And so you're going to hear me talk more today about what we're calling the Disciple Making Playbook. In the Disciple Making Playbook, this online course, it's meant to help you create a Jesus-centered discipleship plan that everybody in your church can get excited about. It's going to help you develop discipleship targets that you can measure. It'll maximize what you're already doing to grow your church and elevate both the quality and quantity of disciples at your church. And finally, it'll give you the confidence to communicate the plan and the strategy. How's all that sound? I hope awesome. Course enrollment is open this week only at disciplemakingplaybook.com. Go to disciplemakingplaybook.com. And hey, course enrollment is this week only. So if you're listening later than when this is going out, we'll be doing some new course enrollments in the future. And so you can put your name in the wait list. But you can find that at our sponsor today, Disciple Making Playbook, at disciplemakingplaybook.com. So with all that said, hey, if this podcast is helpful for you, will you rate and review? And will you subscribe and follow so we can keep doing more episodes like this? So in just a minute, the co-host of mine, Chris Johnson, is going to welcome you to the show, and I'll be the guest. I hope you enjoy it. It's a crazy new episode of Red Letter Disciple. Let's do this.
Ladies and gentlemen, get ready for the most electrifying episode of Red Letter Disciple that we have ever seen. You might be asking yourself, where's Zach Zehnder? Look around. He's nowhere to be found. This is episode 39. In what's going to be the most compelling episode in 4 seasons. You see, Chris Johnson, that's me, interviews the former world record holder for the longest speech, Zach Zehnder. Let's hear it for Zach Zehnder. Get in here. Zach Zehnder's life mission is to challenge all people to be greater followers of Jesus. Stop me if I'm incorrect. He is the co-host of the podcast Red Letter Disciple.
That's what this is.
Ever heard of it?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're in Indonesia, you have, because we're number 21 right now in Indonesia, rocking the Far East markets.
I think that was Malaysia, by the way.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
That's why you're the host. He is the author of the best-selling Red Letter Challenge. Zach currently serves as a teaching pastor. What's that mean?
That means I get the opportunity to preach and to teach, but I don't do much else.
So you don't have to like run budgets and stuff like that. You just get to come on, cherry pick, give your best messages once every 3 months.
I'm not going to answer that.
All right.
Take the fifth on that. I think I'm a valuable, I hope I'm a valuable, pastor to King of Kings.
What do they pay you for that? He is the teaching pastor at the very, very, very cool King of Kings Church in Omaha, Nebraska, that his own Poppy founded. All of this has helped Zach become a thought leader in the discipleship space. And so today, you're going to see all this come together. And quite honestly, one of my good friends, somebody who has helped me a great deal as I've planted our very own church in Lake Mary, Florida. His passion, if you ask him, is to help church leaders. And he's done that on many late night phone calls with me. Today's conversation's really directed toward pastors and church leaders. And we're going to help you guys. Thank you. That is real Corinthian velvet. We are going to help you raise up great disciples at your church. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, my good friend and the catalyst here at Red Letter Living. Zach
You learned
Zehnder.
that word catalyst from a guest this season, right?
Yeah, I did. He was using things like catalyze. I didn't understand. Like, is that chasing a cow? I'm not sure exactly. So let me just break it down, because we were talking about this before the podcast. I think discipleship is tough. honestly.
Mhm.
Like, because I've always considered myself, and I told you this, an evangelist. If I can get somebody to come to an event, if I can get
Right.
somebody to come to church, I feel like my job is done as an evangelist, right? To a certain degree. But that's not the case with discipleship. Discipleship is something that like never ends until the end, right? Like, and it just feels so daunting and so intimidating. Why are you so passionate about something that many church leaders, if they're being honest, would even proclaim is a very difficult topic?
I think it's difficult, like you said, because there is no real end. It's just a journey,
Right?
And we can get better, we can improve, we can be greater, and that's what this whole podcast and really a lot of the stuff we do at Red Letter Living is all about, is to try to bring that out of people because God's put that inside of us. But like, it's hard to know, and at least when I was going through life and then university and seminary where I was learning how to be a pastor, I didn't really hear a lot of concrete help for how do you actually know if, like, we know it's important to be disciples, but how do you actually know if you're successful or not?
Well, and I went to the same seminary that you went to, and it was just like, no, you just go to church.
Well, not to knock on our seminary, because
no, it's great.
It's just hard to know like how to be effective,
right?
And so what I really feel, so I've had a few things in life that I wouldn't say God spoke to me, but there have been a few things that have been so impressed on my heart that I can't let go of. And so like one of them was, as a high schooler, like I really felt like God called me to be in full-time ministry. And another one for me was in the second year of leading a new church in Florida called The Cross, this idea that discipleship, yes, it's always a journey and there's never an end, but it's not as complicated as we've made it out to be. And so this idea was to do what Jesus said to do for 40 days. And so we did this at our church before it became Red Letter Challenge. It was called the Do What He Said Challenge, which sounds very law-based.
Right.
But it was trying to mobilize an entire group of people to do what Jesus asked, called, commanded. And the simple thing that I felt like God impressed upon my heart was this: the best way to follow Jesus is to follow Jesus. That's it. And for whatever reason, I felt like he put that on me, again, impressed it on my heart, that he was giving me that idea to steward in this generation for whatever it looked like.
So you
Does that
say,
make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. But you say the best way to follow Jesus is to follow Jesus.
Yep.
Like, that seems very simplistic. What do you mean?
That's it. That's all I mean, is like, we don't need new disciple making efforts.
Okay.
It's not an intelligence problem that we have. There's never been more information on how to follow Jesus. And I think more confusion practically day to day. What does that look like? And so that's where I'm trying to come in with an answer, is like, Jesus came and lived in this world. So he is our savior. And he's also our Lord. Praise God. He's both of those things, but he's also our model, our teacher, our example. And so I don't need to look anywhere else for how to be a disciple of Jesus. I just got to look at what he said and just do what he said. Like, that's at the end of the day, whether I'm an effective disciple or not. And what I love about our theology, and many as well, is like, when I fail at being a great disciple or living up to that, there's grace to welcome me back. And so all of this is fueled and compelled by God's love and God's grace. And it's his love and his grace that compels me to want to be the greatest disciple I can be. And the only way I know for how I'm effective or not is if I'm actually doing what Jesus calls me to do.
Okay. So if you're doing what Jesus has called you to do, it's like, break that down simplistically. Give me some things that Jesus has told us to do.
Yeah. And really, this is the genesis behind Red Letter Challenge, is like, okay, well, if I'm going to do what Jesus called me to do, I need to know, what did he call me to do?
Right.
And so where do I look for that? I look for that in the four Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, primarily. And in those four Gospels, you'll notice a color that's red every time the time Jesus speaks.
Unless you have a very discounted Bible.
Yeah, unless there's some other things going on that we don't know about.
Right.
And that's in most Bibles, where the words of Jesus are in red letters. And so for me, it was then looking at all that he said and specific emphasis on like the commands or the imperatives in the text, And for me, when I just kind of read all of them and jotted all of them down, there were 5, I felt like, targets that jumped off the page to me.
Okay.
It's not everything. It's not an exhaustive list, but my simple brain can handle 5.
Okay.
And so these 5 for me were being. So it all starts about relationship. Before he ever asks us to do anything, he invites us into a relationship with him. Forgiving. That's huge. Yeah. He calls us to not to receive his grace, but also to give it away. Serving. So there's a natural progression on these two. Like the more I'm with God in relationship with him, the more I understand his grace and forgiveness. The more I understand his grace and forgiveness, not only do I give that away to others, but I also I want to go out there and, again, compelled by that grace, change the world. I want to use the gifts and talents. And so then next is serving. And so I'm using my gifts, my talents, my unique abilities, and then not just those, but like the resources God gives to me. And that's where giving comes in. That's the 4th target. And giving is really the one that he frequency wise talks about the most.
Talks about money over 1,000 times.
Yeah, money and greed and possessions. Right. And so there's a lot of that. And then finally, my hope is, at least through the words of Jesus, that all of this boils down to, I can then be an evangelist. I can then be a person who goes and speaks and shares my story, my testimony. I can be a witness. In fact, if you look at all 4 of the Gospels, we typically think of only the Great Commission in Matthew 28, but all 4 of them, plus the few red letters in Acts 1, have a sending that's taking place.
So the last one is going?
Last one's going. Yep. So being, forgiving, serving, giving, going. And again, peeling back, like, how will I know if I'm an effective disciple? My thing is, if you don't have targets that you're shooting for, you may not ever know. And so I at least want to simplify things and, again, say this isn't an exhaustive list. I'm not saying it's a perfect list, but hey, it's Jesus-centered because it came directly from his mouth. And so I know I'm not wrong in that. By the way, the overall idea of like going back to Jesus to hearing and doing what he said, that's a stolen idea from Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. And so I feel like it's pretty grounded in actually what we've seen is in the materials we create and these 5 targets. It's really hard to argue against this premise.
It doesn't matter what denomination.
If you're a disciple or a Christian or a pastor, it's like,
do you think, Zach, let me ask you a serious question here. Do you think that most church leaders, when they come out with a big thing like this, they always use alliteration? Do you think you failed because you didn't alliterate these 5 goals?
Oh, that's a good question, because I love alliteration, an acronym, and I think I've used it in we've written 4 books now, if you count the one coming out, Serving Challenge this fall. And the other 3 have either an alliteration or acronym.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you feel...
Did I fail the Lord in that? I don't know.
Okay, all right. So out of those, obviously you took these 5 targets from Scripture, right?
Yep.
But let's have a candid conversation. Out of those 5 targets, which one, as a disciple of Jesus, do you struggle with the most?
Yeah, that's good. I think
not struggle, but what's the hardest?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think for me,
because you have a hard time forgiving me a lot.
Others would say that I've done very well at still having you in my life after all the things.
Okay, that's fair.
Me.
That's neither here nor there.
So it's a great question, and I actually think it's really important to look at the 5 and to realize where you are on these. So I would say the spectrums for me are the ones that I have the opportunity to struggle with the most. Being is the first one, because
I'm being in his presence.
Yeah, I'm just because
you're very active.
I'm a doer. I'd rather I don't need to sit and read this. Let's go do something. And so the problem with that is if I'm not in a relationship with God, like the motivation can get wrong. I don't know if I'd have the endurance. Going would be another one, and I think that's somewhat conditional for me, because I'm actually usually not afraid to share my story and to talk about Jesus. But specifically with non-Christians. And the reason why this one's tough for me is because if I'm not intentional about actually being in a relationship with someone who doesn't know Christ, I just get in this Christian bubble where everybody I know already knows Jesus, because I work in the church, I do this. And so I'm totally comfortable talking to other Christians about Jesus and sharing my story. And I'm actually uncomfortable doing that with those who don't know him. Without intentionality, I'm not in those relationships. I
got you.
So I go back and forth on the going one.
So what about the one that just comes the most naturally to you?
Forgiving or giving. One of those,
forgiving
one of those
or giving.
two would be the one. Yeah, and what's cool is the giving piece for me hasn't always been that way. I think like part of my story is even in seminary, which is like I'm ashamed of myself for doing this at that time, of like the first financial freedom I had, because I was running an online business, selling stuff, golf equipment online to make my way through seminary, and did very, very well, at least comparatively to most seminarians.
Right.
And I feel like, and again, it's maybe not much to a lot of people, but like the very first financial freedom I had, I gambled it away. And that was while I was at seminary. And so and so what's neat though is
like literally.
Yeah.
Oh,
I struggled with that as a little piece of my story for several months at least. And thankfully it didn't go too far time wise. And it was an opportune time to kind of flip from that. But what's neat is like that was a struggle, but now it's actually a spiritual gift. Like not only am I strong in it, like when I take a spiritual gift test, like generosity like comes up to the top. And so it's pretty cool to see that.
Do you think that phase actually helped develop the generosity, like once you came out of it?
Yeah.
That's interesting. I've said this a million times. A lot of times our struggles, like God, it doesn't create that struggle, right? But then he makes it so you can like minister to other people and navigate.
I think of how many guests we've had on this podcast that like,
my goodness,
right? That it's even the one that we had, the week prior with Davey Blackburn. It's like, sometimes God, it's not that he causes it, but man, he can use that and he can use all of our past weaknesses, and they can become great strengths of ours that are actually in our hands to help bring freedom to others in the future, which is pretty cool.
We were driving here today and we went by Omaha Steaks, and I constantly try to get you to stop at Omaha Steaks and you won't. But that reminded me of something else you brought up. You brought up the other day that the church can learn a lot from the famous hot dog eater, Kobayashi. Or who's that other dude? No, let's go Kobayashi.
Yeah.
Explain. Right. You have to explain. That makes no sense.
I know. I got to give you a little context, right? And so what Kobayashi did was he completely redefined the hot dog eating competitive world.
How?
So let me tell you this. So you mentioned he's not the guy today. He's not. Joey Chestnut.
That's who I was thinking.
The man in
that
hot dog
guy's
eating.
Crazy.
He's won 7 in a row.
Right. He's like the Tiger Woods of hot dogs.
Yeah, more than 15. In fact, last year, I don't know if you saw this footage. There was a protester.
The guy ran up there.
Yeah. A protester ran up during the 10-minute hot dog eating contest.
Didn't
and
face
Chestnut choke slammed the guy.
Right.
And still won by 15 hot dogs.
Yeah.
So Chestnut has the world record, 75 hot dogs
in 10 minutes.
21,000.
I saw our producer Cam do 67.
That's amazing.
Which was amazing. He put down 67.
But before there was Chestnut, there was Kobayashi.
Oh, okay.
And I think Chestnut owes a lot of his success to a guy named Kobayashi.
Explain.
So there are 2 authors. They wrote a book called Think Like a Freak, and they detail Kobayashi's story pretty well. And what Kobayashi did, they dive into his story, but what you find is that he came out of nowhere. So the hot dog eating contest started in 1916.
Really?
Yeah.
So Nathan's hot dog.
Nathan's in
on
Coney
the 4th
Island.
Of July.
Yep. And so for 85 years, from 86 to 2001, which was when Kobayashi burst onto the scene, the record for hot dogs was 25 by Kazutoyo the rabbit of all.
Was it an actual rabbit?
No, it was a person.
Oh.
So Kazutoyo was there, and this was the first year that Kobayashi out of nowhere. Nobody knew who he was.
Right.
He was 23-year-old, skinny, 5'8", baby face.
Who's this punk?
Yeah, even one of them mocked like your legs are thinner than my arms. Like, who is this guy?
Oh boy.
And so in his very first attempt, Kobayashi broke the world record, which is insane. And you would expect like a record that had taken 85 years to build to 25 would go to like 27 or 28 or maybe 30 would be a 20% improvement. But instead, Chris, it went from 25 to 50 like that. He doubled the world record.
So basically he ate a hot dog every 2 minutes.
No, not every 2 minutes. It's only 10 minutes.
So, oh my gosh.
He's eating 5.
He's eating 5
and
hot dogs.
Eating 7.5 in a minute these days.
So 5 hot dogs in a minute.
Here's how he did it, though. This is where I find the story fascinating. Where we're going to get the truth that comes from it. Is he redefined the problem by asking the best first question.
What was it?
Because for decades, everybody was like, how do I eat more hot dogs? How do I eat more hot dogs? He redefined the question just a little bit, but it made all the difference. How do I make hot dogs easier to eat?
Okay.
And so by changing the question, he then was allowed to experiment different ways. And so Kobayashi was the first one to not eat the hot dog and the bun together.
Okay.
He was the first one to break the hot dog in half, which is funnily known as the King Solomon method.
Why is, wow. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
So, and then the first to soak the buns in water, which soggy buns don't taste good, but they go down quicker and provided the hidden benefit of the hydration. And he did a lot of other things. So
do you think that's cheating? Do you think that's cheating?
It's not. But you know what's funny is they thought he cheated
because
they thought that there's conspiracy. Like, how do you do this? Like maybe he's got, quelled his stomach or got
That's what I do.
The Japanese government, maybe they thought, because this is on our soil, on our Independence Day, there were some that thought the Japanese government put a second esophagus or stomach inside of Kobayashi. None of that was true. It's because he thought about it in a new way and tried new things. And because of that, like what he did, now Chestnut's doing all of those things.
Right.
And all the competitive eaters are doing what Kobayashi did.
Dunk.
And so Chestnut's looking at Kobayashi saying he was great.
Right.
I want to do what
I'm going to do it.
I'm going to do what he did.
Better.
And that's exactly what we need to be doing with discipleship.
Okay.
Is we don't need to look anywhere else.
We got to dunk our hot
greatest
dogs.
of all time is Jesus. And so we're going to look to him and do what he did. But it starts by asking the right first question. And so again, for me, the first question when it comes to what we're trying to do in the disciple making playbook, which is help pastors and church leaders create a Jesus-centered disciple making strategy at their church. The right question is not, which I think is where a lot of churches go, how do we make more disciples? The right question is simply this: are you committed to really following Jesus? Because that's it. Again, we don't need to reinvent a disciple-making strategy.
Right.
We just need to go back to the original disciple maker, Jesus himself, and say, he was great. He called us to these things. So are we really committed to doing what Jesus called us to do?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. That's good. And also Jesus did some tricks with food too. So that's cool.
Yeah, there you go. That's maybe where him and Kobayashi have even more together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, he didn't dunk his bread before, but you get it. So tell me about
But did he dip the wine in the bread like the intinction style? Maybe. We don't know. I don't know.
He could have. He could have. It made it easier to go down. Like the hot dog. Tell me about the disciple making playbook, Zach. I know you're very, very excited. You put a lot of time into this.
Yeah.
And again, discipleship is, to some pastors, a lot of pastors, no offense, but they're like, okay, I'm gonna do my sermon. I'm gonna do hospital visits, those kind of things. But discipleship is, happens in small groups, and I'm kind of going to be hands off of that. That's the opinion of some people. So tell me more about what you've been working on for all these months.
Yeah. So obviously creating Red Letter Challenge and being able to help churches go through it. We've helped more than 1,000 churches. And so over the last decade, really being in this discipleship space and fleshing it out more, what I really hope the disciple making playbook is it's the first sort of premier product that is designed specifically for pastors and church leaders. And so the real specifics, it's 10 what we think are really power-packed, highly practical, Jesus-centered video modules that will come with an application guide that goes with it and a ton of other free things along the way too, that we really believe is going to help a pastor or church leaders develop a Jesus-centered, unique disciple-making strategy at their church. Because Chris, a lot of the problems is people know discipleship is important, but they don't have the strategy, they don't have the plan. And so some of you might be asking, well, why do we even need this if you just told us, like, we don't need a new plan? Right. We just got to follow Jesus. And I totally agree with that. But where people and pastors need help today is it's really helping understand what makes their church unique and what is it about Jesus that we can and we ought to share with our church as we invite them into the plan or the strategy. And truthfully, like, Jesus lived 2,000 years ago,
right?
And times have changed. And so, like, how do we still incorporate the things that Jesus incorporated and called us to in a world that looks very different from that world?
Yeah.
And so it's the disciple making playbook is an attempt to in a simple to understand, hopefully fun, way. I tell the Kobayashi story in a little more detail in the course, and hopefully in a really fun way to help churches really think about how are we making disciples? Is our church really committed to following Jesus? And how are we going to help them in that process?
Yeah. So you said, obviously, Jesus was around 2,000 years ago. The world has changed a lot. I mean, back then, Twitter was just getting started.
Right.
And so you also were talking a little bit earlier about the main problem in Western Christianity. Can you kind of go on what you were saying to me earlier?
Yeah, and it's exactly, I think that over the last, and we jump into these conversations a lot on the podcast, but in the 20th century, or especially the last 3-4 decades, I think the American Western church, North American church, has gotten really good at getting people to say, yes, I believe in Jesus. And,
hallelujah.
Yeah, that's good. That should be celebrated, right? That's the grace that he's given to us that ought to then compel us into a life of discipleship. And
but it doesn't always.
It doesn't. And that's what we see. Barna, who's top research company in our nation, usually when it comes to Christianity, they're saying now that it's, believe it or not, still more than 60-some%. I think 63% of people still believe in Jesus as their savior in America. They're identifying that. But then Barna says less than 20% of those that say that are practicing Christians. And so here's how I summarize the problem in one sentence. We've created a nation of believers, but very few followers.
Right.
And so the problem is discipleship. And so if the problem is discipleship, like, we've got to do something. And that's what this course is an attempt to say. I'm not against getting people to believe in Jesus. Keep doing that. But let's then on the backside of that really form a church that will hopefully elevate both the quality and the quantity of disciples or Christians at your church.
So if, let's say, like, who is the disciple making playbook? Is it designed for a pastor to watch with like his small group leaders, or is it designed for the pastor? And then ultimately, part two of this question, like, what is the dream after somebody completes this course?
Great question. So it's definitely designed for a pastor or a church leader, or even better would be like an entire church leadership staff or team, or maybe board of directors, depending on how churches are structured. So awesome to have one person go through it, better to have 2 or 3, even best probably to have, I don't know, a team of 8 to 10 or so, again, depending a little bit on church size and things like that. But so the goal is to help all of whoever it is at a church to see the importance of discipleship, what we've gotten wrong, asking the right question, identifying what needs to be in our disciple making playbook. And then, part of it too is like, we are doing a lot already at our churches. And so how do we maximize and leverage the things we're already doing?
Right.
How do we do discipleship in a digital age? We'll talk about that in one of the 10 sessions. And then finally, at the end, what we want to do, the last session, is all about communicating the vision. So my hope, this is the goal of the course, is that you would go through something like this. And again, ideally, likely with some key team members of yours. And at the end of it, you would have developed a Jesus-centered disciple-making playbook that everybody in your church can get excited about. So we're trying to create a discipleship strategy plan. We call it playbook, so that at the end of it, like, you've got something to present to your church.
I see.
That everybody in your church is going to be a part of.
And it doesn't matter like new believer,
correct,
30-year-old believer, things like that. Okay.
So one of the sessions, Chris, talks about what I think is the one thing missing from most, some churches don't have one, but when they do have one, here's what I think the one thing that is missing from most disciple-making playbooks, and I've touched it on already, and it's measurable targets.
Okay.
Right? We talked about that from the mouth of Jesus. These are the 5 I located. And so what I say in the course and what I say now and all the time is, like, if you've got a disciple-making strategy and a plan that's working, keep going, right? If you don't, try these 5 targets.
Gotcha.
Or if you don't like these 5 targets, that's fine. But make sure you choose targets that are Jesus-centered, simple to understand. And then finally, the big one, measurable, that you are committing to measure over the long term. So the targets, if you will, Chris, are the outcomes of the disciple-making playbook. Like, these are the things that we hope come from it. So you'll come up with a plan for your church, and a part of that is developing and discerning what are the targets that our church is committed to measuring over the long term. And I'll even talk about how to measure those targets inside the course.
Like a tape measure?
Maybe
abacus.
It may be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do most of my. I'm still concerned that there's going to be a great electronical, a breakdown. So
Yeah.
I do all my computing on an abacus.
Wow.
Yeah.
Electronical, is that a word? Electronically is a word. Maybe it is.
Cam's saying yes, and I trust him dearly. So you told the story, Matthew Emmons. That's right.
Have you heard me share that one before?
No, I have not. But you briefly said it, and I said, "Zip your lip. Let's do it for the podcast." So tell it here.
Yeah, and that comes back to the targets. So it's another kind of illustration or story to bring the truth to what I just mentioned. So Matthew Emmons was an Olympian. He was in the 2004 Athens Olympics, and he was the greatest sharpshooter.
Oh, I was in that one.
Ever to live. And so in those Olympic Games, the answer or the question wasn't like who's going to win gold. Everybody knew Matthew Emmons was going to win gold. It was like who's going to win silver. And so sure enough, he gets to the Athens Olympic Games. He crushes it. He's way ahead of the competition, and he gets down to his final shot. And I think technically he needed a 7.3 to win, and he'd not gotten worse than like a 9.5 or something in the previous 9 shots. And so he's getting ready to fire his last shot, way ahead of the pack. And the greatest sharpshooter ever to live, he stills his breathing because rifle sharpshooters, like, they try to fire in between their beats per minute or whatever. And so that's, you got to learn that. Breathes, calms, fires, and sure enough, bullseye. Right? I mean, what else would you expect from the
world's greatest sharpshooter?
And it was a bullseye. Problem.
Wrong target.
He crossfired, and so.
Oh no! Really?
Yeah, he legitimately did, and he hit bullseye in the target next to his lane. It's like when we bowl and we skip the lane over.
I've actually done that.
We get a strike in the other lane. It's cool, but it
still counts, right? No.
And sure enough, he got a 0, finished 8th place.
Oh my goodness!
And so here's the truth.
But hold on. I honestly feel like it's harder to get a strike in an opposing lane.
I agree, but it still means nothing on the scorecard.
All right.
And it meant nothing for Emmons. He didn't get a gold medal. He dropped to 8th. Wow. And so the point is, you can literally be the greatest sharpshooter in the history of the world, which he was up to that point. But if you don't know what you're aiming at, or you're aiming at the wrong targets, it's going to have devastating consequences. Wow. And that's where I think the Christian church has gotten, is we're either not aiming at anything. And that's where this really confusing representation of Jesus comes from, or we're aiming at targets that are actually taking us into places and where we don't want to be.
Okay. So talk about one of those targets that a church aims for that sometimes is completely off the mark.
Oh, totally. And this was stuff I read from in my seminary days. David Kinnaman, his book Unchristian, right, which really is I would say the basis for a lot of what Red Letter Living, not just the Disciple Making Playbook, but this whole ministry is all about. Because in there they were asking people impressions of Jesus, which were mostly favorable, and then they would ask non-Christians impressions of Christians, which are supposed to be followers of Jesus. And so the number one words that came up from that study, which some of you pastors, church leaders have heard maybe 100 times: judgmental, hypocritical, anti-gay, old-fashioned, too political, insensitive, boring, out of touch, and like just all of these words that I'm like, seriously?
You don't want those on a Christmas card.
No, right. It's like that's not the Jesus I know. When I think of Jesus, I think of grace, and we're known for judgment, which by definition is the polar opposite. Grace is a free gift you don't deserve, and judgment is getting exactly what you do deserve. Jesus is known for good works. We're known for hypocrisy. Jesus is known for unity. We're known for division. Like, we're not missing the mark by a little bit. We're way off.
Yeah.
And that's this whole Red Letter ministry. And that's where I think churches can do really well at, if we do nothing else, we've got to come up with helping our people see what are the things we ought to aim for. Yeah. And again, that's where I came up with those 5 targets and challenge people and pastors to come up with their own targets if they don't want to use those 5.
So you use that word a lot. Like,
which one? Targets?
No. A challenge. You use that word all the time. You use it on every book that you produce, is challenge. And I've known you for 15 years. Like, you are a competitive person. right? Like you are. I mean, I've played,
You are as well.
I am, but I played ping pong with you, and you are uber competitive. I don't think I've ever beat you in a game of ping pong. I don't think you've ever beat me in a real athletic event.
I don't think you've ever admitted that before. Yeah, that's
but
good.
Like basketball, I think I'm 87-0 against you. But that's neither here nor there. The point is, why are you so focused on the idea of challenge, right?
Yeah. So, okay. So in the disciple making playbook, we talk about the 5 target or however many targets, but those are the outcomes that we want. So what then is the system? What are the things we're going to do that's going to get us to those outcomes?
Right.
So in the course, I talk about these 4 critical ingredients of discipleship. So the ingredients are going to help us to get to the outcomes. And so one of those 4 is the word challenge. And it's a big word for me because, well, maybe it's somewhat personal. Like I'm an Enneagram 8, so I'm just kind of wired to be the person that Enneagram 8 is the challenger. And so like I have that inside of me, but also I've seen it in my own life that my faith has grown the most, and I have become a better disciple when I have challenged myself or when life just presents challenges to me.
Okay.
And so sometimes that does happen where life just comes on you and it's like, oh, I never saw this coming,
right?
Good or bad. And like, it's something I've got to overcome. It's something I've got to go up against. And then there are other times when in my life, at least, I've chosen, like, my faith is a little stale. I need to do something. And so, you know, it crazily is about every 3 years in my life that there's like, I should do something.
I should try to preach for 60 hours.
That was one of them. So like in 2010, 11, it was planting a church. That I'd had such a comfortable life up to that point. And like, I had a faith, but like, I never felt like my faith was on the line. And by planting a new church in Florida in 2010, 11 were the years that opened, that grew my faith so much more. Just planting a church.
I see what you're saying.
And all that goes into that.
Yeah.
Like, I have no idea how it's going to go. I don't know what I'm doing.
I mean, you are literally relying on God.
That's the years I met you. And so like, you know, all that.
I remember you being really thankful for meeting me.
But that was 2010, 11, 2014. I broke the longest speech record. And like, that was a challenge for me. That was a stretch. And it did so many good things in the community and to the church, but like it did something great in me.
Well, I just remember, what was it? 59 hours? 53 hours. I remember like I was there for probably 20 of those hours. Right. And I remember like your last 30 minutes and you talking about your grandpa and then you like walking to your car and you literally look like somebody from The Walking Dead. I'm like, I didn't know if I was ever going to see you again. That was just so
it was a challenge. And I had no idea. It was like, let's just do this and see what happens. And it like, cool. We did it. We broke a record. We raised a ton of money and it got a lot of notoriety. And I was like, that was awesome.
You raised a lot of money for Helping Hand
Hand in Hand.
I'm sorry. Who's still to this day
great.
Killing it. Like, and they're just so if you've never heard the story before, and I'm tooting Zach's horn, but God like inspired him because he had this gentleman named Dave Douglas who we had on a previous podcast. Go listen to it.
We'll put that in the show notes.
It's so good. I mean, he was a mail carrier.
Right.
He was a mail carrier and he just had this passion that he wanted to help people in addiction. And Zach gets this insane idea that he's going to preach for 53 hours and they're going to raise money. He raises over 6 figures for this. It gets started. And Dave Douglas still to this day is running Hand in Hand and they're doing amazing. Like if you ever have a thought that like, man, we should try something like this. I mean, go for it would be the thing. Like, I mean, that when you came to me and said, we're going to do this, like, I can't stay up past 1 a.m. Like, and Zach had all these nurses and nutritionists and they're feeding him like coffee and all this different thing. Gatorade, take this. And it was like, that was so cool, man.
It was cool. And yeah, we raised more than $100,000, which got them to open their first home. And to hear David now.
Dave said he wants you to do another one that they could use some more cash.
I don't know about that.
Okay.
But now they've got 4 homes helping 50 men, women, and children. It's like awesome. And maybe it would be there in some other way, but like to know I was a small part of that. But also it helped me see that God is on my side.
Right.
And it's when we step out into our outside of our comfort zones, we get to experience the Holy Spirit. And then for the next thing, that gives us confidence to go even more.
I like that you preached from Genesis to Revelation, and you preached for literally 3 days. And then like 2 days later, you had to preach. like, hey guys, just go. But no, I don't know if it was 2 days later.
The next
Did you take the next Sunday off? Like, what else do you have to say after
That's what I said the next Sunday that I did preach. I was like, I feel like I gave you all my best material.
Yeah, just go back and watch the 53 hours.
You got a lot to listen
Exactly. To. So I've had a question that I've wanted to ask you, and I've held this for a while. Like when COVID came along, right? And I know we haven't completely, but we're back to kind of where we were, right? And church the pastors were doing a lot of stuff online, right? I know you guys were producing all kinds of videos at King of Kings and things like that. And we were producing videos. But the number one question that I had, and I planted a new church 6 weeks ago, Resurrection Church in Sanford, Florida. Go check it out if you're there. I planted a new church, and we intentionally have not streamed any services because I want people the first couple of months to come check it out. Right. Yeah. And I get it. We're going to have to do it eventually. Whatever, I'm a video guy. I want to do that. But my question is, Zach, do you think that you can actually accomplish discipleship via online, or does discipleship need to be, because it's a lifelong process, does it need to be face-to-face, in person? Can a church actually disciple virtually?
So it's a very good big question.
It is, and I know it's not going to be a simple answer.
Well, I think the answer is yes.
Okay,
but it's different.
Okay.
And so, I have my hunches and my biases. I would prefer that discipleship would be in person. But discipleship digitally definitely is happening, can happen, and will happen. And there are some relationships that start online or digitally, and then they will become a physical, your marriage to Allison. No, that started in person.
Oh, it did start in person.
But that happens all the time. I mean, dating apps and websites, and not just that, but Meetup. You join through these things, or you get on a Facebook group, and things happen. So there are many relationships that do that, but there are some relationships that are all online all the time, and that's all they'll ever be, and that's okay. It's just different. And these relationships are already happening. And so for me, when it comes to discipleship, can someone be discipled digitally? Yes. Can they be discipled in person? Yes. They're just different from one another, and they can help one another.
And so you can't do it the same way.
You can't do it the same way in some ways. Okay. And so here's what we teach in the disciple making playbook.
Just give me the whole thing so I don't have to order the product.
is we teach this, that I teach that the same ingredient, like you don't need two discipleship plans. I'll just say that. You need one that's big enough to encompass what you're doing in person and digitally. And so I think it's the same ingredients and it's the same targets. So it's the same systems that you're putting in place, and it's the same targets that you're trying, or outcomes that you're trying, but it's different in how you achieve them.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And so relationships is one of those ingredients that I isn't super important and that we talk about. And so relationships, there is in-person relationships, there are digital relationships. They are both valid. They are different from one another. And so it's not necessarily saying I've got to do these 7 things digitally and these 7 in person. It's no, I'm going to stick to this, and I'm going to see that here's the power of this in person and the power of this online. Here's the weaknesses of this in person. Here's the weaknesses of this online. And we're going to figure out for our church what's best in that. And for each church, that's going to be a little different. I do believe that, the answer for digital in the future for most churches is not less. It's going to be more. Like, digital's not going away. It's disrupted.
What do you mean more?
We have to, and this is more of a collective thing than maybe an individual church, because I think each church has to find what works for them.
Are you saying produce more content?
Yeah, we have to be. Like, this is where people are today.
Okay.
They are there digitally. And so if we're going to learn how to disciple people,
right,
real discipleship is not going to happen primarily from 1.5 hours in a month.
Right.
Which is the average, person comes once to twice a month.
Right.
So we have to figure out how to get this.
Okay, so let me ask you another follow-up. Does discipleship happen in a Sunday morning service?
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's a big thing for me is there are a couple things that pastors say that bother me. One is that relationships don't happen in rows, they happen in circles. Which what they're meaning by that is or discipleship doesn't happen in rows, it happens in circles. What they mean by that is small groups are important because that's what happens in circles. And I totally agree with that. But why are we devaluing then the very thing that many of our churches are spending so much time, emphasis, money, staff, which is the weekend service, the rows?
Do you think it's devaluing it?
If you say discipleship doesn't happen in rows, it happens in circles, that to me feels like you're devaluing the thing that you're likely spending the most time on.
Can I tell you what I said last Sunday?
Yep.
And you're probably going to chastise me. I'm dead serious. Yeah. Okay.
I hear it all the time.
I said, because I was pushing out our new small group program, right? And I said, the church is one of the few places that you can still come and get the gifts of God.
Yeah.
You can get his word in a tangible way. You can get, and our belief is that God is present in communion. So you get forgiveness.
Totally.
And you get adopted into the family through baptism. I said, there's a lot of great places in this world, golf clubs, all these different places where we long for community, but this is one of the last bastions on earth where we get those things. And then I said, but I believe that deep discipleship happens in small groups. And so I think it's imperative that we get into that community and allow the Holy Spirit to develop a deeper discipleship there.
I have no qualms with that, Chris.
All right.
To me, the answer is both. Yeah, we need the community and the presence.
I'm just glad that you don't have any qualms.
We need all of that from the Sunday experience, and we also need small groups. So we need them both. To me, it's like I don't want to devalue or diminish what we're doing. I want to say what we're doing is important on all those levels. And so I mentioned the one thing. The other thing I don't like that pastors will often say is, well, transformation doesn't come through information. It comes through relationship. And I'm like, it does come through relationship, but it also comes through information, which is the preaching of the word.
Right. It's faith comes from hearing.
Yes, it absolutely. And so all of my thing is not, these are bad. It's like we need all of that, but we need to figure it out in a way that makes sense for our people.
That makes sense. What can you give me an idea in your personal life? What brings you the most qualms? All right.
Maybe when we do podcasts in the days you stay with me in the house.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love staying at Zach's house because when I get there, his wife, you must travel a lot because there's always in the shower like all the little hotel shampoos. Nice. And I get to pick what hotel shampoo I want. So today I went Vidal Sassoon.
Oh, wow.
It was a nice, it was just great. I really love it.
It's good. And you were telling me about the apricot face scrub.
So here's a dead serious thing. I get in there and I'm not the kind of guy that uses a scrub on my face very much, but Allison had put in my shower a really high-end apricot scrub. And I got to be honest with you. I said, I'm going to check this out. Maybe I need to be apricot scrubbing, you know?
Maybe.
And so I put it on my face. I scrubbed. And then you must have some kind of water softener in your house because it felt like I could not. After 5 minutes of scrubbing, I still felt like I had the soap on my face. I get out of the shower. I dry off. I look in the mirror. My face looks beet red. And then I come downstairs and I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I'm having. So I text my wife, unbeknownst to you, and I said, I used an apricot scrub and my face is bright red. And Jen goes, you dummy, you're not supposed to, you're going to be on camera. Don't use new products. Anyway, All right. Sorry. We can cut that. We can cut that.
Great.
I'm just saying, but it had some pumice in it or something. I don't know. All right. So we've been chatting here for a few minutes, and the next question I had written down, you had already kind of I walked me through what church leaders and pastors can expect, but we've already talked about that. How can someone, they've listened to our 45 minutes here, and they say, all right, Zach, I want to check it out.
Yep.
Is there a sample or something that can download, or how does it work?
Yeah, we have a 3-part video series we've been giving out. that people can see, and that they can find that at redletterchallenge.com/masterclass.
Whoa, masterclass!
Yeah.
Hey, can I make some master classes?
Yeah, you can call it anything you want.
No. On the red letter label.
I don't know. We'll talk.
Let me I'll do barbecuing for disciples.
There you go.
Yeah,
I like that.
All right.
So they can get that obviously, and but this week is the week we are actually going live with the full course, the Disciple Making Playbook, and we have that website, disciplemakingplaybook.com. That's where they're going to find all the information about the online course and how to get in. So here's the situation: is we are opening enrollment, but we're doing it very short period of time. So it's only open this week. And so if you're listening to this not live, you can still go to disciplemakingplaybook.com, put in your information, and join the wait list for when we open the course, because we're doing something special with this release. And the thing we're doing is we don't just want to unleash these videos, but we also want to walk alongside of the pastors and church leaders. And so we're given a great price, which they can find that on disciplemakingplaybook.com. But we're also offering 10 weeks. So every other week. So it'll be 5 coaching calls that I'll be leading, and I'll actually be bringing in some guest experts to help us as well, because we really want this to be something that can be a win for you. So think of it as a course. Like, you have videos, there's an application guide that have some leading questions that we think you and your church staff would have a really fun and necessary time going through. And then we're going to come every 2 weeks and talk about the things we've learned, that go through the questions and dive even deeper. And our real hope and our real goal is that at the end of it, like, it's ready to go. You've got a plan that you are ready to present to however you present it at your church, to the people to get maximum buy-in. And here's why I know this is important, Chris. LifeWay did a study last year, 2022, and they asked pastors what was the skill that they both know they need to and are willing to invest in. And number one on that list.
Can I guess?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, I'm going to be serious. Let me see. Well, it would make sense to like growing disciples.
That's it.
Yeah.
Disciple making, 63% and 55%.
55% was
they could click a few, but 55% was technology.
I was going to say technology.
Think about that though. Like 60 most, and I think that's good. I think that people are
at least they're aware.
Exactly. Something's got to change. Like all the graphs, all the charts, all the trends are going in the wrong direction.
Right.
And Sam Gibson was preaching on Revival once, and he quoted Barna that typically when they're looking at charts like this we are in an irreversible decline, which is really depressing.
Yeah. But
we have God on our side. And so they said there's 2 things that need to happen to change all these downward trends. 2 things. One is a move of God, which we can't do that.
Right.
I think we can make room for God to move, but we can't make God move. And number 2, Barna said, was an intentional movement of discipleship.
Okay, that's cool.
And so pastors know that something's got to change. They know they need help. They said they're willing to invest in it. And so my piece is great. We've been doing this for 10 years, and I think we've got really great content that we've been developing that can really help be an ally to you and your church, that in the end is going to produce greater disciples of Jesus, and it's going to be awesome to walk alongside of you. And so I hope everybody, the church leaders,
give them the website again. Give them
disciplemakingplaybook.com. You can see it all there. You can preview the course as well. And
don't forget to use the promo code Chris Johnson is my favorite for 3% off. Did we not do that?
Yeah, maybe scratch that.
Or hashtag more Cam for 1% off. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you
actually, if you put that in, we're going to charge you 10% more.
But this is the time to get in. I don't know that we're going to be doing the live coaching to go alongside of it.
I'll do it.
Outside of this particular offering. And so if someone wants to get in, not only are they going to get the videos, the application guide, a bunch of freebies to go with it, but they're going to get 10 weeks of coaching to go alongside of them. And so if you're on the fence, like, this is the time, let's do it.
Yeah. Come on. Seriously, get off the fence.
I want to help churches make disciples.
Do people still sit on the fence? I don't know.
Uncomfortable. Why would you get off?
Yeah. I mean, all right, Zach.
Yeah.
I've been doing this now for 39 episodes, and I don't know if you've heard one of my podcasts, but at the end of every podcast, I ask our guest to challenge our listeners.
Okay.
And if there's one thing that they could do practically this week to challenge themselves, Zachary Zehnder, What's your middle name?
Andrew.
Zachary A. Zehnder.
Mm.
To be greater disciples. What would the challenge be?
That's good. So this would be for church.
Well, I've asked it 39 times.
Yeah. And there you go. This would be for church leaders and individuals.
Okay. Do you have a 2-part challenge?
No, just one.
Okay.
Commit to measuring targets, discipleship targets. So identify and measure the targets. Again, whether you like the 5 we use or not, it doesn't matter to me as much, but just are you committed to truly following Jesus? If you are, you'll have targets that you can commit to measure.
Right.
And so let's identify and commit to doing that.
Right. Okay. So if you participate in this challenge, what I need you to do is to go to, why don't you tell
they
them?
can hashtag Red Letter Disciple on any of the socials.
That'd be amazing.
And hey, I'd love to know what are the targets you're going for.
Right.
So we can cheer you on. And
did you see that today on you posted something on Red Letter Leaders?
Okay.
And you posted, I don't know if you did or somebody on your team did, what is the number one, like, how
measurement
can
for health?
Yeah. Did you see what I posted? Did you see what I posted?
I didn't yet. No.
The cost of communion wine. I just feel like if you have an expensive communion wine, like you're obviously doing pretty well. But if you're using Manchevitz, like maybe things are going south. That's all I'm saying.
The old Concord Great Manischewitz.
Exactly. All right, Zachary.
What you got?
This is the time where we come together and we really learn a little bit more about you. You have been in ministry for a long time. You are turning 40 years old.
This week,
you're 40
July
years old.
3.
I mean, honestly, what do you have left? 20, 25 years? 10 years? I don't know either. Like God's going to call you at some point.
Old.
But let's just say your best years are probably behind you at this point. So
thanks.
Let's do this. We are going to, I'm sorry, Zach, I'm just joking. I'm trying to banter here. Next week is episode 40.
Yes.
You are turning 40 this week, my young friends. Yes. You write 40-day challenges. 40. I thought to myself, why don't we give Zachary A. Zehnder a game show segment about the number 40 in Scripture?
Oh, wow. Okay.
All right. Here we go.
Wow.
We are going to ask you, Zach, I have plucked 16 questions.
Oh, my gosh.
I'm sorry. We might not get through all of them. The average score taken by pastors around the country, I found a pastor-only website, is 53%.
Wow.
That's awful. So that's awful. That just tells me that's awful. All right.
Okay.
So here we go. Blank fell for 40 days, 40 nights during the flood. Is it manna, rain, Israelites, or hail?
Fell during the flood?
No, fell for 40 days and 40 nights during the flood. Genesis 7:4.
Water, rain. Is that what you said?
Rain. Hold on. Oh man. Yes. I think. Okay.
It wouldn't be manna.
Hold on. I know. I might have. Hold on. I got to reset this.
Okay. Reset.
Oh my goodness. All right. I got to play quiz. I see. Okay. It is rain. Okay.
Yes.
Blank explored the land of Israel for 40 days. Was it Jacobites, spies, Midians, or prostitutes?
Spies.
That's right. Next, the Hebrew people lived in the blank desert for 40 years. The Mojave, Sinai, Arizonian desert.
Sinai,
my bad. Yes, that's correct. You're 3 for 3.
Crushing it.
Blank's life is divided into 3 40-year segments, separated by his growing to adulthood, fleeing from Egypt, and his return.
Moses.
Yes, come on. That's simple.
Easy.
All right. Several blank leaders and kings are said to have ruled for 40 years. That is a generation, including Eli, Saul, David, and Solomon. Would it be Jewish, Christian, Muslim, or Hindi? Several blank leaders and kings.
Would it be what? Jewish, Christian, what?
Jewish, Christian, Hindi.
Jewish.
Yeah, of course. This is really, I should have previewed this. Goliath challenged the Israelites twice a day for 40 days before
David.
Come on. What is this? Kindergarten?
How did pastors only get 50?
I don't know. Maybe it wasn't pastors. Maybe it was third graders. Moses spent 3 consecutive periods of 40 days, 40 nights on Mount
Sinai.
Come on. I'm not even going to give you the multiple choices. A blank consists of 40 SE apostrophe AH, Siah, approximately 200 gallons of water. A blank consists of approximately 200 gallons of water. Is it a coin, pence, cypress, or mikvah? That's going to get you. That's going to get you. You're not going to get this. Maybe
Mikvah.
Mikvah?
Yeah, I don't know.
You're right. 40 lashes is one of the punishments doled out by the blank, though in actual practice, only 39 lashes were administered. Was it the Sadducees, Pharisees, Temple, or Sanhedrin? 40 lashes is one of the...
I mean, it came from the Romans, but I think it was the Pharisees that would have done it.
Or it's the Sanhedrin. You missed it. One of the prerequisites for a man to study blank is that he's 40 years old. Is it the Quran, the Kabbalah, the Torah, or the Levitical priest textbook?
That's not in the Bible.
What's the prerequisite?
The Quran.
No, it's got to be Torah. Kabbalah. That's awful. All right, we're going to stop. This is a stupid quiz. I'm embarrassed by myself.
Wow.
Zach, we've learned a lot today. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing to help other churches. Really, I know this is a labor of love. I know that you spend a lot of time and dead serious. I was just talking about you the other day. Of all my friends, you are like the most driven and most focused. You are hyper focused on creating content for pastors to make the tough job of discipleship a little bit easier. And so on the behalf of many pastors around the country, thank you. Keep getting it done. God bless you. And I know we joke a lot, but the most respect in the world for you.
Love you, dude. Awesome.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for another podcast. As always, you know what you could do to help this man on his 40th birthday?
Oh, yeah.
This is what you should do. You could send me a monetary cash amount that I will.
It won't get to me. I can tell you that much.
A portion will. But if you don't want to do that, I get it. Times are tight. Gas is expensive. This is what you can do. You can go to iTunes and rate us 5 stars. If you don't think we're 5 stars, then don't rate us. That's just ridiculous. But rate us 5 stars. Put a little comment in. Here's the thing. We have been seeing, and this is no joke, all around the world, we are getting some traction in different countries. And Zach and I will call each other and text each other and say, why are we 78th in Australia? It doesn't make any sense. But that's because you guys have been sharing this, and we're so thankful. We want to bring you more seasons of this. And it only happens if people listen and we're not talking to each other. So thankfully, that's not been the case. So please share it with a friend. Share it. Go online, download it, subscribe to us. As Zach says, smash that subscribe button. And thank you so much. And God bless you guys. We'll see you next week for another episode of The Red Letter Disciple.
Well, I hope that was helpful for pastors and church leaders, and I want to be more helpful. So thanks again to our sponsor, Red Letter Living, and for my team that's really helped me go all in to create the Disciple Making Playbook. It is an online course with 10 power-packed video modules that has so many free things along with it. And if you sign up now, as you heard in the podcast, we've actually got an online coaching that will be going on for the 10 weeks. And so this added bonus is awesome, and we want you in. So go to disciplemakingplaybook.com, get in today. Like this week is it. And then we're going to close enrollment. And of course, there'll be future times as well. But we'd love to have you and really help your church create greater disciples. Hey, if you missed anything, you can go to our show notes at redletterpodcast.com. You can find links there. You can find the link for our sponsor, and you can find links for a lot of the things we mentioned in today's show. So with all of that, next week, I'm really excited to bring a guest onto the show. He came out with a new book. His name is Sam Black, and he came out with the book, The Healing Church, What Churches Get Wrong About Pornography and How to Fix It. Sam's been working with Covenant Eyes for almost 2 decades, and he's got not only his own story to tell, but he's got a background in this. And truly, I think it's one of the most helpful podcast episodes we've ever recorded to date, because pornography, it's a major struggle. Many are stuck, but thank God we don't have to be stuck. God has freedom for us. So make sure you don't miss that. The way you don't miss it, follow and subscribe on whatever your favorite podcast platform is. And then it'll automatically pop up next week. I don't know what that sound was, but hey, I'll be seeing you next week. God bless you.